The sun was already painting the sky with strokes of gold and pink when we arrived at the lakeside house. Our new summer retreat was tucked away at the edge of an expansive, tranquil lake, surrounded by a thick embrace of old pine trees. It was as picturesque as a scene stolen from a dream. I could see the excitement dancing in the eyes of my children, Lucy and Tom, as they pressed their faces against the car windows, eager to explore. As we unloaded our belongings, I couldn't help but admire the rustic charm of the house. Its wooden exterior, weathered to a soft gray, spoke of years cradled by the elements, and the wraparound porch promised many evenings spent watching the water's gentle movements. Inside, the house was simple but welcoming, with a spacious living room that looked out over the lake through large pane glass windows.
I'm gonna find frogs.
Tom declared, his voice a mixture of command and glee as he darted toward the water's edge, his sister trailing behind. My wife, Ellen, smiled at me, her eyes reflecting a serene contentment. "This is going to be good for us," she said, squeezing my hand gently. "Just what we needed." I agreed, feeling the stress of city life begin to melt away in the warmth of the summer sun. The first days were blissful. I spent mornings on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching as mist rose from the lake, the surface shimmering under the early sun. The children's laughter became the house's heartbeat, filling it with life and energy. They played endlessly, inventing games and exploring every nook and cranny, both inside the house and along the lake's shore. In the afternoons, I would join them for swims in the lake, the water cool and refreshing. We'd splash and play until the sun began to dip behind the trees, painting the sky in deeper hues of orange and red. Evenings were for family dinners and storytelling, the children animatedly recounting their day's adventures. It was a slice of life so pure and joyful, it almost felt surreal. Yet as the days passed, a subtle change began to weave through our idyllic routine. Lucy, usually so full of stories and chatter, grew quieter, her moments of silence stretching longer. One evening, as the sky bruised to twilight, she sat beside me on the porch, her small hand finding mine. "Daddy, can I tell you about my new friend?" she asked, her voice a whisper lost in the rustle of the leaves. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, a smile tugging at my lips, unaware of the chilling journey her words would soon usher us into. Lucy's eyes were wide and earnest as she began to tell me about her new friend. "Her name is Emily," she explained softly. "She lives in the lake, and sometimes by the old oak tree. She tells me stories, Daddy." Intrigued, I nodded for her to continue, the prickling of unease barely registering in my mind. Children often have imaginary friends, especially in new, enchanting environments like our lakeside retreat. Yet, something in Lucy's tone, a certain gravity, gave me pause. "She told me about the people who used to live here," Lucy continued, her voice dropping to a hush. "Sad stories. Emily says they're still here, in the lake." The words sent a chill down my spine, not just from the content, but the way Lucy seemed distant, as if reciting a memory rather than making up a story. Later that night, after tucking the kids into bed, I shared Lucy's odd tales with Ellen. Initially, we chuckled about it, attributing it to Lucy's active imagination and her love for ghost stories. But as the night deepened, so did our conversation. "Do you think she's just adjusting to the place?" Ellen asked, a frown creasing her brow. "Or maybe it's something more, her way of coping with the isolation." The following days were threaded with a palpable tension, as Lucy's stories grew more detailed and dark. She spoke of a family tragedy, where grief lingered long after the sounds of sorrow had faded. Emily, the ethereal friend, seemed to be painting a history of our summer home that was steeped in sadness and whispers of untimely deaths. Determined to dispel the growing shadows, I decided to engage more with the children, to draw Lucy away from her invisible narratives. We started hiking around the area, exploring the surrounding woods and the small town nearby. Yet, each time we returned to the house, Lucy would wander off to her favorite spot by the lake, losing herself in quiet conversation with Emily. One afternoon, while Lucy sat sketching by the water's edge, I approached her, crouching down beside her. Lucy, can you tell me more about Emily? What does she look like? I asked gently. Lucy's hand paused on her paper, and she looked up at me with serious, solemn eyes. She's very pale, Daddy, and her clothes are old, like from your storybooks. She says she can't leave the lake because she's waiting for her family to come back. That night, as a storm gathered, brewing dark clouds over the lake, the atmosphere in the house shifted. The air felt heavier, charged with an unspoken foreboding. Ellen and I lay awake, listening to the wind howl, the distant thunder rolling over the waters, a symphony that seemed to echo the unsettling tales our daughter had shared. Sleep eluded me as I turned over the details in my mind, each piece adding weight to an invisible scale. Was Lucy's imagination simply more vivid here, fed by the scenic, isolated environment? Or was there something more to these stories? A truth hidden in the whispers of the past? The storm broke with ferocity that night, as if the lake itself was voicing its unrest. Lightning flashed, casting eerie shadows across the house, while thunder rolled across the sky like the rumbling of an angry spirit. Ellen clung to me, her body tense with each crack that tore through the air. "Do you think the kids are okay?" she whispered, worry lacing her words. I rose from our bed to check on Lucy and Tom. As I padded softly down the hallway, the dim light from my phone illuminated pictures hung on the walls, images of the lake and the woods, serene yet somehow somber in the storm's filtered light. Reaching the children's room, I found Tom asleep, oblivious to the chaos outside. But Lucy's bed was empty. Panic flared within me as I hurried back to alert Ellen. Grabbing a flashlight, we ventured into the howling night, calling out for Lucy. The rain lashed at us, as relentless as our fears. Near the lake, Ellen's voice broke through the storm. "Lucy!" We found her by the old oak tree, soaked and shivering, staring out over the lake. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and haunted. "She was crying, Daddy," Lucy said, her voice barely audible over the storm. Emily was crying. She wanted me to see. The following morning, the storm had passed, leaving a tense calm. Lucy was quiet, her usual vivacity dimmed. Concerned for her well-being, I decided to take action. Once Ellen and Tom busied themselves with tidying up after the storm's mess, I took Lucy into town under the pretext of needing supplies, but intending to visit the local library. There, amidst the musty smell of old books and the quiet whispers of turning pages, I asked the librarian about the history of our lake house. The librarian, a middle-aged woman with spectacles perched on her nose, frowned slightly, her fingers tapping on the computer. "Ah, the old Harper place," she murmured, pulling up records. "It's had its share of tragedies, that one. Lost to fire once long ago, rebuilt by the next of kin. There was a drowning, too, a young girl, around the turn of the century. Heartbreaking, they say." Armed with this new grim knowledge, I thanked the librarian and took Lucy for ice cream, trying to ease the shadow that had fallen over her. As we sat in the small diner, I pondered how to approach this with Ellen. The history Lucy's friend Emily had shared was proving uncomfortably close to truth. That evening, with Lucy asleep, I relayed what I had learned to Ellen. Her face paled as she listened. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "We can't just ignore this, can we?" "No, we can't," I replied, my mind racing. "But first, we need to understand more. There's something about this place, something unresolved that's reaching out through our daughter." We decided to delve deeper into the past, to uncover whatever secrets lay submerged beneath the lake's still waters. Perhaps in understanding, we could find a way to shield our family, to sever this haunting connection. But as we made our plans, unease settled deep within my bones, a foreboding sense that some stones are better left unturned. The final days at the lake house were shrouded in an unsettling fog that seemed to rise not just from the water, but from the depths of the past itself. As the summer waned, a chill settled over the house, one that the sun's rays could no longer dispel. The atmosphere had grown thick with an ominous presence, a stark departure from the peace we had briefly enjoyed. Lucy became increasingly withdrawn, her moments by the lake growing longer, her eyes often fixed on the undulating waters with a haunted gaze. "She's talking to me again," Lucy whispered one evening, her voice trembling. Emily says there's something she didn't tell me before, something dark. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. That night, as the wind howled against the house like mournful cries, Lucy's revelations continued. Emily's family didn't just leave, she confided in a fearful tone. They were cursed, bound to the lake after a terrible deed. She's scared because now that she's spoken to us, the curse is stirring. The next day, with dread looming over us, Ellen and I decided to search the local archives for any credence to Lucy's chilling tales. What we uncovered among old land deeds and faded newspapers was more horrifying than we could have imagined. The family that had once lived here, the Harrows, were rumored to have delved into dark rituals. Their sudden disappearance a tale of warnings whispered through generations. Armed with this knowledge, we confronted the reality of our situation. The house, the lake, it wasn't just haunted by a benign spirit, but a malevolent past that refused to rest. We have to leave, Ellen insisted, panic edging her voice as shadows seemed to creep from the corners of the room, stretching towards us like dark, sinewy fingers. That night, the air was electric, charged with a palpable sense of impending doom. We packed in haste, the children's confusion and fear feeding our urgency. As we loaded the car, the ground beneath us trembled subtly, as if the lake itself were awakening to claim us. As we drove away, I glanced back at the lake house through the rearview mirror. A thick mist was rising, swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. In that moment, a cold realization washed over me. We were leaving, but part of us would always remain, ensnared in the lake's dark history. The echo of Emily's voice, the whispered secrets, the curse. Our summer retreat had ended, but the story of the lake was far from over.